My rejection of the institution's contempt for humanity and its pseudo-form system, jumping through hoops to become a flunky or stool pigeon, was an affront to their mentality. For them, my transition, my redemption was bogus. I epitomized everything that they did not want a prisoner to be. I was now neither burdened by the external chaos that surrounded me, nor by my own miscarriage of thoughts. I was prepared to stand before the committee without the baggage of deception, doubt, or defeatism. During the next scheduled classification committee meeting, the dissenting members jockeyed with Hammond, who stood his ground in support of my receiving upgraded status. Prior to the meeting, unknown to me, Hammond convinced Associate Warden Nelson to support the transfer. It seemed like an unshackling of heavy chains when Nelson expressed his agreement with Hammond in front of the entire committee. I can visualize Nelson's hard-eyed expression when he asked, "Mr. Williams, if you are given grade A, do you plan to attack anyone in East Block?" I assured him I did not. In spite of what everyone thinks, I said, "I'm not a rabid animal. I don't have any plans to attack anyone. However, I want this committee to know that I am not a pacifist and that I will defend myself under threatening circumstances. Other than that, you," directing my words to Nelson, "have my word as a man that I will not initiate untoward violence, nor violate my word." Then the Associate Warden, the man most blacks and Mexicans in the whole call the Grand Dragon of Racism, approved my grade A. When Brbr next visited me, I expressed my gratitude. Without her determination, the committee's decision would not have been shifted in my favor. I knew that it was her compelling presentation that convinced Counselor Hammond. She smiled broadly and said, "You're welcome." Later that day, I learned there would be a delay in my departure due to an incident in East Block. For years on death row, there have been racial flare-ups pitting blacks against Aryan Brotherhood and their allies, the Southern Mexicans, La M. This time, a black man named Pride had scuffled with a wannabe Nazi who wore a swastika but looked more like an Asian or a Portuguese. As a result, Pride, who was said to have had his back turned, was shot dead. He was neither Crip nor Blood, but a black man of controlled rage. There were rumors that I had ordered Pride to attack the Nazi. My transfer was suspended until the incident was investigated. Some spineless inmates would say anything to prevent my arrival in East Block. While I was exercising on the yard, the prison mouthpiece showed up, still styling a Jerry curl 1970s hairdo. Standing outside the fence, he said that there was talk of possibly allowing me to visit in East Block if I agreed to be fully shackled while other death row inmates roamed free in the visiting room. He smiled at me like a reptile about to swallow a dove. With the composure of a seasoned snake handler, I declined the offer. More weeks passed. Hammond said there was an East Block lieutenant who stated, "As long as I work in this condemned unit, Tookie cannot be housed here." The lieutenant apparently believed the myths documented in my C-file. Hammond told me that there were numerous kites, notes written anonymously to prison officials by prisoners. Instead, they would warn the prison staff in a kite that I would be attacked the moment I set foot on the yard, which the San Quentin officials would want to avoid. Little did I know what kind of weakness I was up against. Barbara, bless her heart, believed that death row prisoners stuck together, one and for all for all, like a college football team. In time, she realized this wasn't so. When she asked why so many prisoners were opposed to my being housed in East Block, I replied, "Fear. Not fear of me per se, but of the old me and my peers, the return of the monster presence." My peers and I were depicted as ruthless individuals pushing a rigid, compulsory program of discipline, exercise, study, and with zero tolerance for snitches. Though the zero tolerance had been true for years, the other rhetoric was a tactic to keep the rank and file from associating with us. When I finally would enter the hornet's nest in East Block, my opposition was likely waiting to frame or fabricate incriminating statements, then report back to their masters. Not once did the possibility of being physically harmed enter my thoughts. Still, I remained grade A housed under grade B rules. Unfortunately, more confidential information disclosure forms with absurd allegations were being added to my C-file. Supposedly, I was in collusion to hit certain prisoners and guards in East Block. I found myself experiencing a flashback, a visual reckoning. I reviewed my cataclysmic past in vivid color and in all its horror. The doomed life I had loved, praised, and was foolishly willing to die for began to fade with a farewell gesture in darkness. Sleeping one night, I saw a powerfully bright halo of light encircling enormous crowds of children of different ethnic backgrounds. I hadn't the faintest idea what was going on. I awoke drenched in sweat, wondering if it was another omen and why. I had made a covenant with my Mwenyenzi Almighty to embrace a complete change. The fervor of my determination could not allow me to deviate from that goal. More than a month later, the lieutenant who had strongly objected to my being in East Block was transferred, but there were still inmates whispering dissent into Hammond's ears. Fed up with the chicken-hearted controversy, Hammond announced that whoever felt uncomfortable with my being on the yard should request reassignment to another yard. When the day arrived for my departure, I left a lot of books, food, and personal care items with Kerm to distribute among our peers. I felt that once the prison authorities observed my behavior for a year or two, my peers would leave the hole as well. The moment had finally come. I could truly vacate the hellhole that had stolen a small part of me and vandalized so many other lives. As I exited the building, a committee member who was absent the day I received my grade A was walking in. He hysterically questioned the escorting guards. "Where are you taking Tookie?" One of the guards told him, "He's being rehoused in East Block." The committee member's face contorted grotesquely. He spat out, "Tookie, you're very lucky I wasn't in classification that day. I would have never have recommended grade A for you." I responded, being lucky had nothing to do with it. Prayers work, especially when faced with the malicious minds of others.